Welcome to Chamber Chats, wherein we talk to business people around Westport, especially Chamber members. So today's guest is Michael Lennon from the Westport Woods Hotel, well known to us all. A man steeped in hotel history, who has come from the north of Ireland area and he's settled in Westport for about 25 years. And he'll give you a short resume of his most interesting career in life. Where you go, Mike?
Thank you, Ali. It's a great honour and pleasure to be able to do this for Westport Chamber and Westport itself. And we're going through tough times, but we're going to get out the other end. And I'll just correct you. I'm married to a Donegal girl, but I'm from Carlow, so I'm a Leinster.
Oh, okay. We got it wrong.
And I'm from Tullow in County Carlow, and that's where my roots come from. I came up in a small little hotel, small little business there, 10-bedroom hotel with function room in the 60s and 70s when I was born, and reared
what was the name of the hotel?
It was built on the River Slaney, the Slaney Hotel. And in 1965 we had a big flood, so the flood came up to the 7th or 8th step of the hotel stairs. So and they got milk for my sister, who was just a baby. They had to climb along the walls to get it up Abbey Street. But there's a good connection with James O'Doherty. He comes from Tullow as well, and so two good Tullow men on the chamber in Westport, and we're very proud to be living and love Westport. It's a great town to look after us. But I would have been brought into the tourism business, and I went to school in Freshford in County Kilkenny, so there's a bit of the cats in me. So that's why I want to reiterate the Leinster connections. And then I ended up in Tipperary in Rockwell and learned my trade as a chef. I remember finishing in 1984, got my City and Guilds certificate, and Ronnie Reagan came and landed in was it Ballyporeen? I remember being there the week before, and the special branch running around the place. But and after that, I ended up in Cahill Street, and I did my hotel management degree up there in the College of Catering, and that led to other jobs around. I worked for Bobby Kerr in the new park in Kilkenny, and I was telling my own son only as late as last night. An ex-prison of war man, Franz Knobloch. He opened a restaurant and a little guest house down in Killarney. I worked for him for 6 months. So he always told me, don't pass a paper, pick it up. And he was a hard-working man. He developed his business out of a swamp, I think, in Killarney, and it was very, very successful. And from there, I went off to Switzerland, worked in Switzerland for a summer or two in Germany, and then ended up in the early 88, I think. I ended up in Chicago. I know you said you bought a car in Chicago. I heard you talking about $50. So
£50 cost us.
Good memories. So I was a bit later than you there, but I have great memories. I arrived in Chicago on the 1st of November 1988, and Mike Ditka had a heart attack that day. And I didn't know who Mike Ditka was, but it was the last time the Bears won a world championship was 2 years before, and he was their manager. And I tell you that even I knew who he was, because the whole Fox knew, everybody in Chicago, Channel 26, they were all talking about him. So I landed in an Irish pub there called Kitty O'Shea's, and it was a part of the Chicago Hilton and Towers. At one stage,
I was in it.
Yeah, one of the biggest hotels in the world. Yeah. It had 3,500 rooms, and then this guy, an Irishman, Bill Smith was his name, in the early 80s, I think, knocked all the rooms into one. So there was 2 bathrooms in each room, but one for herself and one for himself. So if you're on your own, you could use 2 toilets. But he was an Irishman, and he really turned it around from the biggest hotel into a real fine establishment. All the presidents of the states, if they came to Chicago, would stay there. So it was a great place. And Kitty O'Shea's was run by a Kilkenny man, Eamon Brady, and I was his assistant, and I learned a lot there for 2 years with the breakfast buffet. And we turned, I think, about $5 or $6 million in a small little corner pub in the Chicago Hilton Tower. So per square foot, and it's still there. I was called into it only last November. It's still there, and some people that I had connection with, I got J1 visas for, and they're still there 30 years later. But it was a great place, very homely. 28 Irish people working in it, and we really enjoyed ourselves. So I came home then from Chicago, and I took over the hotel in Tullow for a year, and I went back to the College of Marketing and did the marketing diploma by night, and my mother went off nursing, and I decided Tullow wasn't the place for me, so we sold up, and I ended up in Galway for a year or two in the Great Southern in Ayr Square. The Myrick, I think it's called now, or there might be another name, and they change it every couple of years now. But it was a fine old lady of Ayr Square, and a lot of things happened. I remember P. Flynn coming in on race week, and I wouldn't let him in the door, and he said, "Do you know who I am?" "I do now, yeah." And so we let him in the door.
But when I was a student, we had ways of getting in. But anyway.
Sorry?
When I was a student, we had ways of getting in into the Great Southern.
Yeah, race week was a good week. Worked 24/7 for and all the jockeys, but that was a great time. It was the early 90s, or 93, 92, 93, and I ended up with my good wife. We married out of Galway. She was a Donegal girl, a daughter of Brian McAniff, of the 92 All Ireland fame with Donegal. I think I shouldn't say we beat Mayo. Donegal beat Mayo in the All Ireland semi-final last year. I remember Pádraig Brogan coming on from Lockmore, or was he from up that side anyway, and he was tripped up by one of the McHughes at the time. So I knew Pádraig because he had been playing with Donegal. I think he won a league championship maybe the Christmas or the winter before, or he played with them in the league. But, he came back home to Mayo, and I ended up in Mayo after him anyway in 95. We bought the hotel here with my father-in-law and a couple of bob I had out of the hotel in Tullow my mother gave me, and I've been here ever since, 25 years, and it's been very, very fruitful. We've developed the hotel. It's originally, it was built in 1968 by Juries, and I think from the deeds, the fifth Marquis of Sligo, Ulick Brown, Jeremy Brown's father, and he did it. He had a 10% holding of the hotel with Juries, and then that oil crisis started in the early 70s, and I think that put heed to hotels in the west of Ireland. Juries built a number of them, one in Limerick and Galway, and I think they pulled out of a couple of them. They weren't as profitable. So it was sold on then to a gentleman he was originally from Monaghan, but he was living in on the Detroit Canadian border, a guy called Michael Woods. I met him once in the hotel. He called in to say hello. He had a house across the road on the Key Hill there as well. But he was coming around and had a look. I think it was in the late 90s. He came in and said hello. He's passed away now, Lord have mercy on him since. But we then the hotel, after he had it for 3 or 4 years, and then it was bought by Ryan's. And Ryan's were a group that had holiday type of hotels all along the west coast. They had the Gresham actually in Dublin as well, and they had a place I think over in Brussels. And they were a listed company, and they developed the hotel further, and then sold it on to a sub-branch of that called Euro Hotels, and that was Patrick McCarthy. He was the son of the chief executive at the time. Patrick, and he was a Mr. Ryan anyway. I can't remember his name fully at the moment. He passed away himself, Lord mercy on in the last couple of years. And then we bought it, Brian McAniff Hotels. We were a group hotel. We bought 2 hotels actually. We bought Westport and Yates Country in Ross's Point to add to our Southern Hotel in Sligo, and the Great Northern Hotel in Bundoran, and a good golf hotel, and the Holyrood, which was the home place. And my wife's family place, she's 4 generations of her family came out of the Holyrood. It was her grandmother, her father, herself, her brother's there now, and now there's her nephew is working with her brother in that hotel. So there's 4 generations in there, And her grandmother lived to nearly 199, I think, and she died there about 10 years ago. Nan McAniff, and she was the mother hen of it all. So we ended up, funny enough, trying to buy Ryan's hotels, her two sons, Brian and Sean, and they were known as White Knights at 5 or 6%. And they made a couple of bob and had to sell it off in the stock market afterwards. And we developed as a small Indigenous Irish family hotel group, and we have hotels now still in Dublin. The Skyline came out of that in Drumcondra. I'm a director and shareholder there now at the moment, and learning a lot of problems with cladding at the moment, trying to deal with insurance companies and protect the place. So there's plenty of rocket science in it all. And then we went and we were Waterford from Juries. So we built a group up, and then we kind of went back our own way about 10, 15 years ago. It didn't work out. The two families, one was more financial and the other more marketing. So we kind of went our own ways. But we're still there with about 12 or 13 hotels as an Indigenous family group in Donegal, Sligo, here in Westport, and Dublin. They sold the hotel in Waterford. And I suppose all that along, learning about hotels, I've also got involved with the Irish Hotels Federation. The Irish Hotels Federation is a group of like-minded hoteliers and guesthouse owners that are located all around the country with about 800 properties. And it's a federation that is made up of about 13 branches. So Mayo has its own branch, so I got involved in that. The present chair of it is Darren Madden in the Club A, and we have hoteliers in Knock and Castlebar and Ballina all feeding into it. So we meet up every couple of months and we discuss what is happening and what the overall council and executive of the IHF are doing. And they represent us on tourism policy, represent us with, I suppose, trying to keep the government safe and investing in tourism and development of tourism all along the West Coast, particularly with the Wild Atlantic Way in the Midlands and in the Southeast, in the Irish Ancient East, and then Dublin as a big brand itself. It's nearly 30,000 bedrooms being built, extra rooms being built. They have, I think, 24 or 5,000 at the moment. So it's getting a big push. About 30% of all the rooms in the country are in Dublin. So Dublin is important with international conferences and all of that type of thing. So we're the largest Indigenous industry in the state. We have about 270,000 people employed. Unfortunately, a lot of them aren't employed at the moment, and they will be hopefully brought back when we start opening up again at the end of June and in the middle of July. And hopefully the government will push these phases forward. So, sorry, I'm just going to turn off my phone there. It's ringing. Sorry about that. And I ended up then as being a local branch rep here in Mayo, and then chair of the branch. I ended up becoming vice president of the Irish Hotels Federation about 3 or 4 years ago, and then I became president of it. So it's been a great learning curve for me, learning about tourism and how it works better. And I think it's very, very important that we get a platform to show what we can do in the employment area, what we can do in the marketing area, what we can do also in the financial area, because there's a lot of property, a lot of money invested in property in hotel business all over the country. And I suppose that kind of drives the 8.75 billion of turnover, and 2 billion goes to the government last year. Over 10 million visitors came into the country. So it's it just shows you how stark it is with only 1,000 people a day coming into Dublin and Cork airports when we had 100,000 a day this time last year. 99% of that business gone.
Huge, isn't it? You have seen it all then over the years. What are the biggest changes that since you started? There have been huge changes, really, hasn't there, between building and food?
Yeah, there's been a lot of changes. I think we're becoming more people focused, looking after our internal customer, our colleagues and staff, training them up, trying to educate them. I've come from, as I told you earlier on, the hotel in Tullow was set up in the 1870s by my great grandfather, and he was a station master and brought a rail line from Blessington to Tullow, I think about 50 miles of it. And so he took over a small business, and my own grandfather, that was my great grandfather, my own grandfather then came into it, and he managed it. Little pub, the Mart Day. There used to be probably a stagecoach going from Tullow on to Enniscorthy down to Wexford. That was superseded, of course, by bus lines. The rail line didn't continue. It died in the 1950s or 60s. It just went because it wasn't profitable enough, and the government of the time pulled them out. We saw the rail line from here to Mulranny, and Achill was pulled out around the same time. So that was unfortunate. If this Green government come in, they'd love to have it back, but I don't think it's going to come back that amount. We don't have that amount of money to invest. And then probably the population of the country isn't big enough anyway. But that's the transport, the trains, the stagecoaches, they were all the foundation of hotel business, hotel keeping, innkeeping. And that was the early 19th century. And then it developed. There was hotels, and then they got their bathrooms, and then they got their showers, and they got the commercial traveller, and that's all now developed. And in my time, in the probably 35 years I've been involved in the business, I've seen from that kind of commercial traveller moving around because the road network has got much better, so they don't stay in overnight as much as they used to. The business has evolved, and it's more into particularly in Westport anyway, we're into leisure business, and we're into that international tourism part as well. There's more people coming, travelling in their own cars and travelling on coaches. They're flying in, those 10 million people that are flying into Dublin every year. Well, about 90% of them fly into Dublin. The rest are into Shannon and Cork. The knock flights that come in from Britain bring in a little bit of business, but that's mainly our own people travelling back and forth, and it's visiting friends and relatives. And then the function kind of thing, the experiential side of things. You can see the horses in the background here. I have a little trekking centre here in Bohea, and we bring people from all over the world out on the bay. And actually, I have an initiative there going on. You'll be talking about it at the Chamber tonight, the Visitor Experience Development Plan for Clubay. I have a vision that we get about 130 kilometres of off the beaten track equestrian trail all around from Achill back to Leenane, and that will join on, hopefully, going on down to Connemara. And so there's a bit of vision in developing experiential tourism. We have, of course, Croagh-Patrick, where they were climbing Croagh-Patrick 1,000 years ago and longer. And there's a paper I see on the Torah Foric, which I live on here, from the Bohea Stone. You can see the worship. So there's so many changes, and they continue to change. Technology is part of it. Making sure we hold on to our customers and get them to be repeat customers. And I see that, particularly from the Ryan's time, they developed that golden year. So in golden year customer recall. So it's young at heart, we call it now, because golden year could start at 45. There's people traveling. They have they travel in couples and in groups, whether it be golf groups, whether it would be we had the Murder Mystery Brigade, and then the older ones like playing bowls and bridge and whist. They're traveling from all and dancing. So the social distancing now is a problem at the moment for the dancing. We'll see how that'll evolve over the next couple of months. And I look at it. It's a vocation, this kind of tourism thing. I'm the fourth or fifth generation of my family in it. I have kids that'll end up being the sixth generation of it. Two of them working in the hotel there, Patrick and Kaka at the moment. And the same on Joanne's side of the family. We have we've given our lives to it. We've been well looked after, to be fair, and both the banks and just been I suppose all our financial advisors, and that's what it is. It's a financial house now. We have to look after it and make sure we're making profit and that it's sustainable, and we keep on going and growing and surviving. It's very, very important to the economy. I was talking to someone there recently, and I think there's in Mayo there's about 6,500 people employed in hospitality. That's restaurants, pubs, and hotels. So it's a big employer, and every one of those people are a couple in each property that might be on the wage subsidy are getting paid with the CPUP from the pandemic payment, universal payment by the government. So that they know how much it's costing, and so they have a couple of things to do for us, particularly around liquidity. And we talked there about the European Union putting in some helicopter money into the country. That's very, very important, and that we spend it wisely. We need to look at the whole area of, I suppose, the rates and insurance and all the different costs that we have, and we need to be doing deals on it now to make ourselves more productive and sustainable in the long term.
Do you think will there be a few casualties after this? Cool.
There probably will be, but I always look at the glass being half full, and I'm hoping that, and particularly what I see in the chamber now over the last month or two, and you've seen it as well, there's all these small businesses people and larger business people coming together and trying to work a solution, whether it would be opening up Bridge Street, or whether it would be trying to get more help from Leo, or putting smart marketing initiatives together to encourage people back. And I think it's very, very important that we work together. I don't know if Obama said it, but you work harder together and you'll be stronger together.
So what do you think of Westport as a town?
Westport's a great town. There's a great community spirit. I've worked in Bundoran, I've worked in Galway, and I've worked in Sligo. And Westport is the best of the whole lot of them. And I've worked in Killarney as well. And good. The Kerry men are cute, and women, they're all cute down there, and they know about the crust and the pound. But I think definitely Westport has, and there's been great people here. Pat Hayward I worked with in Westport Tourism, and we got some money for, I remember, £27,000 at the time for Father Mihal McGrail for one of his surveys. It was one of the first jobs I took on when I came into Westport. I got involved with Westport Tourism, and then we got involved. I think it was Harry Hughes came and talked to me, and we set up Destination Westport. So I was a founding member of that, and that has progressed ever since. And Westport Hoteliers Group, we've worked together, and now the chamber, and I'd like to see more coordination between them all. And this visitor experience development plan that we're working on at the moment, I think will do that. And we have a good president there in Helen, and she'll keep us she'll keep the thing moving on.
Mm-hmm. So where to from here? When this COVID came in, you never seen anything like this before, ever?
Not really, although cross-contamination kind of thing, I had to close the hotel in 2002. I remember the winter vomiting bug coming in, and I had to close. I remember one of the Westlife brothers was coming down, and Liam Phelan, he was having his wedding, and I said, "Jeez, I'll have to get this cleaned up, or there'll be bad publicity." So we closed the hotel for 4 or 5 days, give it a massive deep clean, got the bug out, and ever since, I remember the local health environmental officer coming in, and he saying, it's methylated spirits, clean everything, door handles, keys, so there was no cross-contamination. And so we put a process in place that any time we saw 2 or 3 people vomiting or reported at one time, we'd ring them up and they'd say, "Oh, yeah." And then they wouldn't say anything. So it was all just putting the procedures in place and cleaning and keep different segments of staff in different areas. Accommodation people wouldn't go into the kitchen. Right, the restaurant and bar staff had to go into the kitchen. We really watched the kitchen because we didn't want the winter vomiting bug spreading to the food. And then it's about having processes about your people. If they aren't feeling well, you give them the time off and pay them the sick pay and leave them at home so they don't bring it in. So I see this being quite similar. It's about managing the bug until we get, or the virus, it isn't the bug or the virus, until we get some kind of solution, whether it be an antiviral or antibodies, whatever. I think inflammation is also, there's some boy up in Trinity from Ray studying that at the moment. So these are all important scientific. Something scientific will come out of it, but it's down to basics: keeping your hand clean and watch the cross contamination. And we now I've never seen something as bad as what the world closing down. I know on my insurance policy I have notifiable diseases and the plague is on it, and the Spanish flu, I think they'll allow that. But when I went back to Liberty, the underwriters through my brokers in Galway, O'Leary's, I said, here, why isn't this COVID on my as a notifiable disease? And there was 37 different symptoms that could cause the plague, being one of them anyway. And they came back anyway and they said the plague was a bacterial, and COVID is a viral. So I learned the difference between virus and bacterial.
But they both do the same thing.
You would understand that, but
they both do the same thing. Yeah, to tell him that.
But I didn't get any business interruption on that notified disease. Although there were and my good daughter who actually got the bug, she's a doctor, junior doctor in the Mater, Sarah Jane. She went through the 37 notifiable diseases anyway, and 12 of them were viral. So I went back. I got and this is the great thing about the Hotel Federation. We got a barrister involved, and they came back and didn't give me the green light. They gave me the orange light as regards I can defend myself. So I'm going to a loss adjuster on that, and hopefully business interruption, and that'll be good for anyone that has that type of policy. We'll lead on that.
And my final thing for you is, what do you think of the Chamber of Commerce in Westport?
I think it's you'll get out of it what you put into it. So, and I think there's it's good to have a lot of local businesses and a variety of local businesses talking to each other, as we are doing quite a lot of it at the moment, twice a week. But we're all learning from each other, and I think it's been well led, and I think it'll help Westport get back up and be a leading destination because of everybody coming together and working together and trying to get us out there in the front line of tourism again.
Good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I hope you're back in action soon.